Do you know who discovered the fact that light travels faster than sound? Do you know who is called father of early modern medicine? Ibn-sina is the answer of all these questions. In this video, we will cover aspects like introduction of Ibn-sina, life of Ibn-sina, and major work of Ibn-sina. Introduction. Abu Ali al-Hussein Ibn-sina is better known in Europe by the Latinized name Avicenna. He is probably the most significant philosopher in the Islamic tradition, and arguably the most influential philosopher of the pre-modern era. Born in Afshana near Bukhara in Central Asia in about 980, he is best known as a polymath, as a physician whose major work, the Canon al-Canon fil Tibb, continued to be taught as a medical textbook in Europe and in the Islamic world until the early modern period, and as a philosopher whose major sum of the cure, al-Shifa, had a decisive impact upon European scholasticism and especially upon Thomas Aquinas, d. 1274, primarily a metaphysical philosopher of being who was concerned with understanding the self's existence in this world in relation to its contingency. Ibn Sina's philosophy is an attempt to construct a coherent and comprehensive system that accords with the religious exigencies of Muslim culture. As such, he may be considered to be the first major Islamic philosopher. The philosophical space that he articulates for God as the necessary existence lays the foundation for his theories of the soul, intellect, and cosmos. Furthermore, he articulated a development in the philosophical enterprise in classical Islam away from the apologetic concerns for establishing the relationship between religion and philosophy towards an attempt to make philosophical sense of key religious doctrines, and even analyze and interpret the Quran. Late 20th century studies have attempted to locate him within the Aristotelian and Neoplatonic traditions. His relationship with the latter is ambivalent. Although accepting some key aspects such as an emanationist cosmology, he rejected Neoplatonic epistemology and the theory of the pre-existent soul. However, his metaphysics owes much to the Ammonian synthesis of the later commentators on Aristotle and discussions in legal theory and kalam on meaning, signification, and being. Apart from philosophy, Avicenna's other contributions lie in the fields of medicine, the natural sciences, musical theory, and mathematics. In the Islamic sciences, Ulam, he wrote a series of short commentaries on selected Quranic verses and chapters that reveal a trained philosopher's hermeneutical method and attempt to come to terms with revelation. He also wrote some literary allegories about whose philosophical value 20th and 21st century scholarship is vehemently at odds. His influence in medieval Europe spread through the translations of his works first undertaken in Spain. In the Islamic world, his impact was immediate and led to what Mycott has called La Pandémie Avicennienne. When al-Ghazali led the theological attack upon the heresies of the philosophers, he singled out Avicenna, and a generation later when the Shahrastani gave an account of the doctrines of the philosophers of Islam, he relied upon the work of Avicenna, whose metaphysics he later attempted to refute in his struggling against the philosophers. Muzuriat al-Falasifa. Avicennan metaphysics became the foundation for discussions of Islamic philosophy and philosophical theology. In the early modern period in Iran, his metaphysical positions began to be displayed by a creative modification that they underwent due to the thinkers of the school of Isfahan. In particular, Mullah Sadra, d. 1641. Life and Times. Sources on his life range from his autobiography, written at the behest of his disciple, Abd al-Wahid Jajani, his private correspondence, including the collection of philosophical epistles exchanged with his disciples and known as al-Mubahathat, the discussions, to legends, and doxographical views embedded in the histories of philosophy of medieval Islam, such as Ibn al-Kifti's Tariq al-Hukama, History of the Philosophers, and Zahir al-Din Bayhaqi's Tatimat Sawan al-Hikmah. However, much of this material ought to be carefully examined and critically evaluated. Gudis has argued that the autobiography is a literary device to represent Avicenna as a philosopher who acquired knowledge of all the philosophical sciences through study and intuition, al-Hads, a cornerstone of his epistemological theory. Thus, the autobiography is an attempt to demonstrate that humans can achieve the highest knowledge through intuition. The text is a key to understanding Avicenna's view of philosophy. We are told that he only understood the purpose of Aristotle's metaphysics after reading Al-Farabi's short treatise on it, and that often when he failed to understand a problem or solve the syllogism, he would resort to prayer in the mosque and drinking wine at times to receive the inspiration to understand the doctrine of intuition. We will return to his epistemology later, but first, what can we say about his life? Avicenna was born in around 980 in Ibn-sina, a village near Bukhara in Transoxiana. His father, who may have been Ismaili, was a local Samanid governor. At an early age, his family moved to Bukhara, where he studied Hanafi jurisprudence, fiqh, with Ismail Zahid, d. 1012, and medicine with a number of teachers. This training and the excellent library of the physicians at the Samanid court assisted Avicenna in his philosophical self-education. Thus, he claimed to have mastered all the sciences by the age of 18 and entered into the service of the Samanid court of Mansur, or 976 to 997, as a physician. After the death of his father, it seems that he was also given an administrative post. Around the turn of the millennium, he moved to Gurganj in Khorazm, partly no doubt to the eclipse of Samanid rule after the Karakhanids took Bukhara in 999. He then left again through necessity in 1012 for Jurjan and Khorasan to the south in search no doubt for a patron. There he first met his disciple, and scribe Juzjani. After a year, he entered Baid's service as a physician, first with Maid al-Dawla in Ray, and then in 1015 in Hamadan, where he became vizier of Shams al-Dawla. After the death of the later in 1021, he once again sought a patron and became the vizier of the Kakuyi of Allah al-Dawla, for whom he wrote an important Persian sum of philosophy, the Danishnama-i-Allah in the Book of Knowledge for Allah al-Dawla. Based in Isfahan, he was widely recognized as a philosopher and physician, and often accompanied his patron on campaign. It was during one of these to Hamadan in 1037 that he died of colic. An arrogant thinker who did not suffer fools, he was fond of his slave girls and wine, facts which were ammunition for his later detractors. Major works. Avicenna wrote his two earliest works in Bukhara under the influence of Al-Farabi. The first, a compendium on the soul, Makala fil Nafs, is a short treatise dedicated to the Samanid ruler that establishes the incorporeality of the rational soul or intellect, without resorting to Neoplatonic insistence upon its pre-existence. The second is his first major work on metaphysics, Philosophy for the Prosodist, Al-Hikmah al-Erudiyya, penned for a local scholar, and his first systematic attempt at Aristotelian philosophy. He later wrote 3 encyclopedias of philosophy. The first of these is Al-Shifa, the Cure, a work modeled on the corpus of the philosopher, namely Aristotle, that covers the natural sciences, logic, mathematics, metaphysics, and theology. It was this work that, through its Latin translation, had a considerable impact on scholasticism. It was solicited by Juzjani and his other students in Hamadan in 1016, and although he lost parts of it on a military campaign, he completed it in Isfahan by 1027. The other 2 encyclopedias were written later for his patron the Baid Prince Allah al-Dawla in Isfahan. The first, in Persian rather than Arabic, is entitled Danishnama-i-Allah, the Book of Knowledge for Allah al-Dawla, and is an introductory text designed for the layman. It closely follows his own Arabic epitome of the cure, namely al-Najat, the salvation. The Book of Knowledge was the basis of al-Ghazali's later Arabic work, Maqasid al-Falasifa, Goals of the Philosophers. The second, whose dating and interpretation have inspired debates for centuries, is Al-Isharat wal Tanbiyat, Pointers and Reminders, a work that does not present completed proofs for arguments and reflects his mature thinking on a variety of logical and metaphysical issues. According to Gutis, it was written in Isfahan in the early 1030s. According to Maikat, it dates from an earlier period in Hamadan and possibly Ray. A further work entitled Al-Insaf, the Judgment, which purports to represent a philosophical position that is radical and transcends Aristotelianism and Aristotle's Neoplatonism, is unfortunately not extant, and debates about its contents are rather like the arguments that one encounters concerning Plato's esoteric or unwritten doctrines. One further work that has inspired much debate is the Easterners, Al-Mashrikiyan, or the Eastern philosophy, Al-Hikmah al-Mashrikiya, which he wrote at the end of the 1020s and is mostly lost.
If you like this video, give a thumb up and do subscribe this channel for more.